Welcome back to our channel, and in this playlist let us look at the histology of the respiratory system. So let's start with the general structure of the respiratory system. Okay, so anatomically our respiratory system is divided into an upper respiratory tract and a lower respiratory tract. So the upper respiratory tract, it begins in the nose, so it begins in the nasal vestibule via the nasal cavity, via the pharynx, and it ends at the region of the larynx. Okay, then the lower respiratory tract, it begins at the level of the trachea and it includes the bronchial tree down to the respiratory bronchioles, the alveolar sacs, and the alveoli. Alright, then physiologically our respiratory system is divided into a conducting portion and a respiratory portion. So the conducting portion, it is the one which is responsible for cleaning the air, moistening it, and warming it, and provides a passage of the air from the nose to the respiratory portions. Okay, so this conducting portion, it begins in the nasal cavity, right? So this conducting portion begins in the nose, from the nasal vestibule, the nasal cavity, the pharynx, the larynx, the trachea, the bronchi, the bronchioles, and it ends at the level of the terminal bronchiole. Then the respiratory portion, it begins at the level of the respiratory bronchiole and it continues via the alveolar duct, the alveolar sacs, and the alveoli themselves. Okay, so this is the part where gaseous exchange actually takes place. Now let us look at the general structure of the wall of the respiratory tract. So this wall, at most, has 5 layers. Alright, but however, this is a variable. It can have 3 layers, it can have 4 layers. Okay, so on the luminal side we have what you call the mucosa. So this mucosa, it's made up of an epithelium and a lamina propria. So the type of the epithelium depends on which section it was taken from. Okay, beneath the epithelium we find the lamina propria, and in the lamina propria we mainly have loose connective tissue together with the usual elements of connective tissue, and we may find glands and mucosa associated lymphatic tissue within the lamina propria. Okay, blood vessels and nerves are also present in the lamina propria. Alright, so beneath the lamina propria we have the submucosa. So this submucosa, it also has connective tissue, but within the respiratory tract we find an unusual loose connective tissue in the submucosa. Alright, so this connective tissue has the usual elements of connective tissue, and the glands can also be found in the submucosa together with the mucosa associated lymphatic tissue. We also find elastic fibers and collagen fibers in this connective tissue. Okay, underneath the submucosa we have the cartilage layer. Okay, so the cartilage layer is mainly present in the conducting portion of the respiratory tract. Within the respiratory portion we do not find any cartilage. Alright, so this cartilage layer, as you can see, the cartilage is covered by a perichondrium. Alright, this perichondrium is one which appears eosinophilic, and within the cartilage we can see chondrocytes lying within the lacunae. Okay, so after the cartilage layer we have adventitia. This adventitia is simply connective tissue which binds or attaches our respiratory tract to the adjacent organs or structures. Okay, then there is one layer which we can find in some or we cannot find in some, the muscularis. So the muscularis, it is, when it is present, it is found between the submucosa and the cartilage. So this muscularis sometimes is made up of smooth muscle fibers, either arranged in a circular layer or in a discontinuous fashion where we have bundles of muscle fibers. Sometimes we can also find skeletal muscle, for example in the trachea we have skeletal muscle there. So this muscle, it acts to provide different functions. Okay, sometimes it acts to provide the cough reflex, for example the trachealis muscle. Okay, The smooth muscle, it also helps with bronchial constriction and dilation. So it helps regulate how the bronchi constrict or how they dilate. Alright. And it also helps regulate the secretion and propelling the secretions upward through the airways. Okay. Now let us look at the respiratory epithelium. So this is a specialized epithelium found only within the respiratory tract. Okay, so it is made up of pseudostratified ciliated columnar epithelium. So in this histological slide, you can simply see the cilia, and it is made up of tall columnar cells. All right, so we mainly find 5 types of cells in the respiratory epithelium, and these cells include the ciliated columnar cells. Alright, so these have cilia on their apical part, and the cilia function so as to propel the mucus up the respiratory tract such that it can be dumped into the esophagus. So they make up what we call the mucociliary escalator. And this mucociliary escalator, it begins at the level of the terminal bronchiole. Okay. Then we have the brush cells. These are chemosensory cells which are connected to a nerve ending on their basal surface, and then they have microvilli on their apical part. Alright. We have goblet cells. This can be seen here as these clear cells. Alright. The goblet cells, they synthesize and secrete mucus, which lubricates the epithelial lining. It also traps dust particles and particulate matter in the inhaled air, and it also has an antiseptic function. Okay. Then we have the small granule cells and the basal cells. So the basal cells, they are stem cells. They are mainly located near the basement membrane. And the small granule cells, these are neuroendocrine cells. They are members of the diffuse neuroendocrine system. Okay, so the small granule cells are found within the respiratory epithelium and also within the epithelium of the GIT, because during development, both the GIT and the respiratory system, they stem from the same branch, which is the foreguts. Now let us look at the olfactory epithelium. This epithelium is also specialized epithelium found at the roof of the nasal cavity, lining the mucosa of the superior concha. Alright, so at this region, that's where we have the sensing of smell. Okay, so air enters via the nasal vestibule into the nasal cavity, and its smell gets sensed by this olfactory mucosa or olfactory epithelium there. Within the olfactory epithelium, we have 3 cell types. First of all, we have the olfactory sensory neurons. Okay, these cells are the olfactory sensory neurons, which pass through the cribriform, through the lamina propria of the olfactory mucosa. Okay, and then make up the epithelium. On their dendritic ends, they have microvilli. Alright, these microvilli, as they pick up the odors. Okay, then we have the support cells or the subtendicular cells. So these support cells, the cells in between our sensory cells, these provide both mechanical and metabolic support to the olfactory neurons. Alright. The third type of cell which you find is the basal cell. So this is simply a stem cell of the olfactory epithelium. Alright. So within the lamina propria of the olfactory mucosa, we find the bundles of the axons. Right. So these are bundles of the axons as they pass from the olfactory epithelium, okay, through the cribriform to the olfactory bulb in the brain. Alright. We also find the Bowman's glands within the lamina propria. And these Bowman glands function to produce mucus. This mucus is passed via a duct onto the surface of the epithelium. This mucus functions is to dissolve the gases which contain the odoriferous material, and they also maintain a continuous uptake and removal of odoriferous substances from the olfactory epithelium. So recall that the olfactory epithelium lines the superior concha at the roof of the nasal cavity only within the body. All right, so this is the end of this video. Watch out for the next.